I wanna play!
Patrick, we're not playing. We're fighting for our lives.
I wanna play!
Oh, all right.
It's been 2 years since the release of Spongebob Rehydrated, and we're currently awaiting the release of the next major game for everyone's favorite sponge who lives in a pineapple under the sea, SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake. But with THQ Nordic giving this much focus to SpongeBob, some of us are wondering if we'll ever see any remakes for the other shows that were listed as getting the remake treatment back in 2018. And while the bigger, well-known, and better received games like Jimmy Neutron Attack of the Twonkies, Fairly OddParents Breaking the Rules, and the Tak Trilogy are the obvious candidates for the remake treatment because, let's face it, these are some pretty good games. And the early to mid 2000s was the golden era for not just these games, but also for the actual Nickelodeon cartoons they're based on. Danny Phantom, Jimmy Neutron, Invader Zim, and My Life as a Teenage Robot, all of which being some of the most memorable shows on the network, despite some of them being cancelled way too soon. But despite that sad reality, the bright side to this is, if these remakes do well enough, then they can get the SpongeBob treatment, and get brand new games as a result, and possibly find new life as video game series, which, in turn, could be a way for Nickelodeon to revive these shows. But those are just the standalone games I'm talking about. What about the Nicktoons Unite series of games? You know, the games where we had SpongeBob, Jimmy Neutron, Fairly OddParents, Danny Phantom, and even more shows in the later games come together to stop an evil threat of some kind. Yeah, those games, which nobody really talks about. I mean, it's not because they're bad games, which they're not, as they're actually pretty solid titles with some good stories. It's just the first game is a bit slower and a bit rougher than the others. Meanwhile, every single game in the series does feel a little bit repetitive at times, despite the improvements made to each game. Now, if you've been with my channel for a while, you're likely aware of a video I made roughly 2 years ago asking if the Nicktoons games are being remade, given shows like Teenage Robot and Zim, shows that never got a single video game to themselves, appear on THQ Nordic's list of remakes, and whether or not these games should be completely reimagined instead of simply being remade. Well, that video is partially the reason I'm bringing this topic back up, because I wanted to reiterate some things I said in that video and look at these games in a much more positive light, given I was kinda harsh on them before, and to explain why these games in particular deserve much more than simple remasters, and why there's a chance for these games to better measure up and represent these characters' standalone games. So, THQ Nordic, if you or whoever else is working on such a project, and if you're watching this, you might want to take notes as to not repeat any mistakes the original games made. Now, for those who don't know what a reimagining is, I'm going to quickly use the 2016 Ratchet Clank game as an example of what I'm referring to. The primary thing that was changed between the PS4 game and the original PS2 game, aside from the graphics and mechanics, was the overall story and events that happen in the game, that are different from the events of the original game, but includes elements from later games. A few examples being Dr. Nefarious, the Galactic Rangers, and Quark's Redemption being plot points of the third game and not the first game. Not to mention some of the original game's levels had to be cut from the reimagining, sometimes merged with other levels to fit within the game's slightly new story, and to take advantage of some of the series' more recent innovations by adding new sections to certain planets, just to name a few examples. While the game didn't flesh out too much about the story, the movie did go a bit deeper with certain things, like going as far as explaining how Ratchet's able to summon any weapon at will, And stuff like that I think will greatly help the Nicktoons games become the proper crossovers they've always had the potential of being. Especially now that games aren't tied to being yearly releases like they were back in the PS2 and even early PS3 days, which means more time to properly develop them. Now, of course, if the Nicktoons games do get the reimagined treatment, it would make sense to start with the first game to lay the groundwork for the rest of the series. And yeah, the first game happened to be one of those multiplayer type of games that Ratchet & Clank All for One would eventually adapt and improve, by still feeling like a single-player Ratchet & Clank game, but with multiplayer options. Nicktoons Unite though, there are some good things about the game, with a good bit of puzzles and scenarios that require the use of different characters' abilities, like Danny Phantom going through walls, or SpongeBob spraying water to progress the level. And it's pretty cool to explore these locations from the respective shows. However, the rest of the game is much to be desired, as the game moves at a relatively slow pace compared to the sequels, which makes collecting coins for upgrades much more of a tedious process than it already is. There isn't a whole lot of variety in terms of gameplay mechanics. The music often consists of the same 2 or 3 tracks aside from certain levels, and it is highly repetitive despite every single enemy having a strategy to defeat them, and even allowing you to control them with Danny Phantom, which is something the sequels didn't do too much of, as they primarily encouraged spamming the attack buttons. Not to mention, there isn't a whole lot of actual cutscenes, as most of them were just static text boxes, and there was only a handful of proper cutscenes that were present. On top of that, some of them weren't animated very well, which is something else that the later games vastly improved upon, and would likely be accounted for if such a reimagining were to happen. This right here would allow for more character interactions, and I would hope that they address the fact Patrick looks like a dang puppet, as this is something that's baffled me for years, and I don't know how they managed to mess this up so badly 4 times in a row with 2 different developers. Considering the SpongeBob games already perfected his model a few years prior, why did everyone else come out fine except for Patrick? Oh, and don't even get me started on his or Zim's appearances in Globs of Doom. Patrick is just pure nightmare fuel at certain angles, while Zim is... Again, what happened? At least Nick Brawl finally managed to properly translate Zim to 3D. I don't know, I'm just really confused. And a minor nitpick, but I'm still kinda upset that Jenny did not make it into this game, given her inclusion should have been a no-brainer as she deals with alien threats on a regular basis. But I'm also kinda glad she didn't make it in, because after seeing how Zim turned out, I would have hated to see how she would have turned out. Anyways, if Nicktoons Unite were to be reimagined, I think they should go with the style of gameplay the sequels introduced, or an even better idea, and go the SpongeBob movie game route. Seeing as both games featured more linear level designs, this could technically support 2 players, but still feel like a single player experience, something the LEGO games pull off really well all the time, and so did Crash of the Titans and even Ratchet & Clank All for One. The player would be stuck with the characters they've got for the story, like Volcano Island's setup, where new characters would be unlocked as part of the story, but upon completing levels, you can go back to them at any time in sort of a free play mode, where you can choose the characters you want in your party and switch between them when needed, like Attack of the Toybots. Then you can go collect anything those specific characters can get because of their unique abilities, like new collectibles that unlock cool bonuses, more characters to rescue and play as, and even giving access to even more areas, and possibly extra mini-games, thus adding another layer of replay value, encouraging exploration, and allowing room for characters to have expanded movesets and abilities than they originally did in the original games. SpongeBob Rehydrated is a good example of this compared to how these characters play in the Nicktoons games. Not to mention the addition of standard platforming elements like wall jumping, sliding, etc. to give these levels more depth. And these extras would be the perfect excuse to bring in hero zones from Attack of the Toybots for every single character, not just SpongeBob, Danny Phantom, and Tack, making use of certain abilities that they couldn't otherwise use in the standard levels. This would add even more gameplay variety. As for the mechs from Attack of the Toybots, I think we can hold off on those until we see how the first reimagined game does. Now, the first game is in no way short compared to its sequels, as it does take a good bit of time to fully complete. However, if they make the style on par, or do something a bit more than what the sequels did to account for all the extra stuff to do, it could either make the game shorter or longer, depending on how they do things, which will likely change some aspects of the story. But in either instance, I would consider making XJ9 or Jenny Wakeman a main member of the group, with the opportunity to see Jenny interact with these other Nicktoons and fully explore Tremerton in a way we've never quite gotten to before. And since Nick Brawl already established how this world and its characters would look in 3D, the work is already halfway done. On top of Jenny's VA still being able to do her voice after all these years. I just can't say the same for Vexus if they decide to bring her back. But it'd be cool if her and Armageddroid was sort of a tag team boss for Jenny's world. That would be cool because that is something we never got to see in the show before. The upgrade system I think can stay, but it definitely needs more work in my opinion, since the game would likely be sped up due to a new gameplay style and the presence of more character abilities. I think the upgrade system from the SpongeBob movie game would work way better than Nicktoons Unite's original upgrade system, given how well it worked with SpongeBob's linear level design in combination with the game's gradually increasing difficulty. As for the bosses, they were easily the best parts of the game due to the strategy they had that required the use of each character's respective abilities, Danny Phantom overshadowing Jack Fenton to break through Vlad's shields, SpongeBob using the Bubble Bomb to expose Plankton's weak spot, just to name a few examples. The bosses will likely get tweaked as well, but hopefully nothing like they were in the sequels, where you just keep doing something, you don't know if it's working, and hope you're about to finish them. With the exception of King Gorge from Volcano Island, heck, the console version of Attack of the Toybots didn't even have a final boss. Wait, what? Globs of Doom, on the other hand, did give us proper bosses with health bars, and while it was cool to fight Gurr inside Zim's house, it just felt too easy with no real strategy. At least that's what it seems like, as I'm only able to watch videos of the game due to not having played it yet. It's also worth mentioning that Nicktoons Unite's music could stand to be updated with a bit of a new style, given how repetitive and slow it turned out to be at times. And with Todd Maston doing such a good job on Globs of Doom's soundtrack, I'd like to see what he could bring to the table for the rest of the series. But with all these things in mind, and a freely controllable camera, I think the Nicktoons Unite, or Nicktoons United, or whatever the name is they wind up choosing, a reimagining of the first game would be the perfect way to bring this series back in the way it deserves, with the best parts of the series and some inspiration from the standalone games coming together to create something really special. Then there's the question of releasing it before or after the other standalone remakes, because if it's after, then the respective teams will have a better feel for each series and use that experience towards this reimagined crossover, which might be the better option. But either way, one game will be able to springboard off of the others in terms of marketing. For example, if we get remakes for Fairly OddParents Breaking the Rules, Danny Phantom the Ultimate Enemy, and Jimmy Neutron Attack of the Twonkies, in addition to SpongeBob the Cosmic Shake, that would be enough to get people interested in this reimagining because of all these characters being in one game. And if Jenny is a main character this time around, or even Zim as an extra villain, then Nick All-Star Brawl would be another way to promote this reimagining, as well as other Nick-based THQ remakes, whether it be new skins or items in Nick Brawl, or by some other means. Yes, I understand that Nick Brawl is published by Game Mill Entertainment and not THQ Nordic, but ultimately, Nickelodeon owns the IPs that they licensed out to these publishers, so it's likely that they would be the ones to make the decision to do any sort of cross-promotion between publishers. But when you think about it, just any of these games existing and still getting support when the other releases is enough to be considered cross-promotion. We might not get anything like those cross-save bonuses Nicktoons Unite had back in the day, but at least it's something. But this whole concept is a cool idea if it ever happens, even more so now that Nickelodeon is finally allowing new voice recordings for Nick Brawl, the upcoming Cosmic Shake, and quite possibly future remakes. Who knows? Maybe if we reach the point of a Attack of the Toybots reimagining, we can get all that sweet DS content with extra playable characters like Zim and El Tigre, along with the extra levels not found in the console version, like Retroville. We'll just have to wait and see what THQ Nordic has in store for us in their next showcase on August 12th. But anyways guys, that's going to be about it for this video. As always, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think a reimagining should be the way to go for this crossover series? And do you think my ideas could work? If you have any questions or even your own ideas, be sure to leave it all down in the comments section below. Also be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell for more Nicktoons content real soon. And once again, I've been Blue Knight. Thank you guys so much for watching and for the constant support. I'll see you guys back here next time.